Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirviseshasha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So welcome everybody, and we continue our reading of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 19. We had finished till text 18 last week. So we'll begin with text 19 today. Ya enam veti hantaram yaschenam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. When an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapons, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. So we see that people leave their bodies, but then who has left? The body is still lying. The soul can't be killed. It's the soul leaves the body, and then the body is left behind. Soul can never be killed. Even if somebody has been killed by a weapon, the person dies, right? Means the soul leaves the body. But at that time, when the soul leaves the body, the soul still continues to exist. The spirit soul is so small that it is impossible to kill him by any material weapon, as will be evident from subsequent verses. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. So we are all Satchidananda. We are all souls. It's not possible to kill us. No matter how much we try also, what we can do is maximum is to kill the body, because the body is material. But the soul is spiritual. No matter what you do to it, you cut it, you burn it, or we can think of many innovative ways to harm the soul, but the soul can never be harmed. It cannot. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. What is killed or supposed to be killed is the body only. This, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. The Vedic injunction is Ma himsayat sarva bhutani. Never commit violence to anyone. Nor does understanding that the living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Now, it doesn't mean that because we say, oh, anyway, I'm not killing the soul. What I'm doing is just killing the body, and the body is anyway matter. What does it matter anyway? Anyway, we have to give up the body one day or the other. So let me kill this person or let me kill this animal. It does not matter. No, it matters. We are going to get implicated in karma. We have not given life to that person, so we have no right to take away his life and cut short their circle, their journey of evolution. If we are doing that, then that sin we have to take on ourselves, because we are disturbing their journey of evolution. So killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state, as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. So we can understand this, that when a soldier is fighting, he is fighting and he's killing the other enemies, But he's doing so on the authority of his general, the army general. The president has declared the war. And so the soldier, even if he's killing hundreds of people, he is not going to be charged for murder. But the same soldier, after the war is finished, by his own self, by his own decision, he kills even one person, he is going to be tried for murder. He's going to be put into prison. Why? Because that murder he committed, he was not ordered by his superiors to do that. That he's just committing that murder by himself. That was his decision. So he is going to be sentenced by the state law, by the court. He will be tried for that. So same way, Krishna is telling Arjuna to kill, but Arjuna won't be implicated in sinful reactions for this war, because Krishna wants, this is a religious war to show that all the irreligious people are going to be killed and religion is going to prevail.
But in normal situation, if somebody is asking you to do bad for some other person, and you are listening to the instructions of your superiors to do something bad, then who gets into the karma and who gets implicated by karma? The one who gives orders, or the one who's actually doing the action?
So, but then it depends now, who is the authority and what is he telling you to do? Suppose my authority is my mother and she's telling me that now you go and kill this person. So then both of us will get implicated, because
Okay.
she's not an authority, first of all, for me to order the killing of somebody. But the same thing applies then if it's really a president and I'm a soldier in the army and there is a war and then I'm ordered to go kill, I will. That's my duty to be doing that then. Then I won't be implicated. So we have to understand that who we are taking what instructions from.
Okay.
Yeah. So then going to the next one, 2.20. This is a very famous verse. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin, nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuya, ajo nitya shasvato yam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and from ever. He is not slain when the body is slain. So qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. So we can see that our body, it's always changing. We don't have the same body as we were when we were children. When we were just born, for example, we had a very, very different body. And then as we kept growing, our bodies kept changing. But our body is changing. We ourselves, the soul, never changes. We are eternal. Same way, Krishna, his body, he never changes. He's eternal. Krishna is Satchidananda, and we are also Satchidananda, the soul. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or Kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth from the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there, and the soul does not die. So for the soul, there is no birth and no death. It always is existing. What is being born and what is dying is the body. What is changing is the body. We are born for some, we are born, we are very tiny, and then we remain like that for some time. Then we start growing. And then we have some offspring, some children. That's the natural course of evolution of a life. And then what happens? Then we start getting old. The body starts getting old, starts dwindling. And one day we have to leave the body, and then the body vanishes. So all these changes are not actually happening to us. It's happening to our body. So anything which has birth also has death. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He's eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in the history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc., of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old, as the body does. So you see the time factor, we have everything is measured by time. Everything is influenced by time here in the material world. But time has no influence on the soul. Time has influence only on this body. Based on the body, based on the time we have, oh yes, I was born on this day. This is my birth date. And same way we'll have one expiry date when we have to leave this body. But for the soul, for us, ourselves, time is irrelevant. Time has no effect on the soul because the soul is eternal and time is eternal. So the soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. There is a proof of this. Like my dad, I asked him, how do you feel? It was his 76th birthday. And then he said, I feel young. I feel I'm still a young teenager. But this is the evidence that we are not the body, that we are the soul. And so there is a question, what is the role of the soul? Well, we are the soul. We, each individual, we are the soul. We are not the body. And we exist eternally because we each have a loving relationship with Krishna, who's the supreme soul of us, personal loving relationship with Krishna, that nobody can change that relationship. Nobody can take away that relationship from us. The whole purpose of this whole material creation is for us to understand that we have this personal relationship with Krishna and to be situated in that relationship. That's the role of the soul. That's who we are. Is that okay? So,
yeah.
And then the changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproduct either. So you see, the byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls. And owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. So we think that these are our children, but they are also different souls. Actually, a soul has no byproduct. We don't have that capacity as a soul to create another soul. No, we don't. The children who we call our children, they are each of them individual souls also who belong to Krishna, who also have an eternal relationship with Krishna. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. So as the body grows, it's born, it grows, then it stays for some time, produces, byproduct, dwindles and vanishes. That's the body. But the soul doesn't go through these things. It doesn't go through these changes. In the Katha Upanishad 1.2.18, we also find a similar passage which reads, Na jayate mriyate va vipaschin, nayam kutaschin na babhuva kaschid. Ajo nitya shasvato yam purano, na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad Gita. But here in this verse, there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the center of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart, where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. So sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is there for daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. So that's how we distinguish. What's the difference between a dead body and a living body? The soul is there in the living body. That's why we are calling it a living body. And when the soul leaves the body, we call it a dead body, although the body is the same. So what is the difference? Why is that one body so dear to us that we can do anything? And whereas the other body, we want to get, we need to take, like, before it starts decomposing, we have to either burn it or bury it or do something to it immediately. What is the difference? The difference is the soul. It's because of the soul. So it's the soul that is important. And it's because of the presence of the soul that this body is so valuable to us. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. So the supreme consciousness of Krishna is, Krishna never ever forgets. For millions and millions of years, Krishna says to Arjuna that I have spoken this Bhagavad Gita millions and millions of years ago to Vivasva, to the sun god Vivaswan. And so, but Krishna says to Arjuna, you have also taken so many births, but you have forgotten it. But Krishna never forgets. That's the difference between us and Krishna. We forget even what we did yesterday, what to speak of the previous lifetimes, But Krishna never ever forgets. He's never forgets. That's why Prabhupada is writing. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. But the very fact, even today, Bhagavad Gita was spoken millions of years ago. Then again, it was spoken 5,000 years ago. And now, after thousands of years, we are also trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna's words are eternal. They are relevant. As they were relevant then, they are relevant today. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anuatma, and the super soul, Vibhuatma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad 1.2.20 in this way. So there are two in our body. There is one, we are sitting, our Anuatma, we are sitting, and next to us, the Vibhuatma, the super soul is sitting next to us. So the Jivatma and the Paramatma, both are there in the same body, sitting there. So the Katha Upanishad says, Anor Aniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atmasya Janitor Nihito Guhayam Tam Akratu Pashyati Vitashoko Dhatu Prasadan Mahimanam Atmanaha. Both the super soul Paramatma and the atomic soul Jivatma are situated on the same tree of the body within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. So only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentations. But how can we do that? The easiest process to be able to do that is to hear and chant. By chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, by hearing from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, gradually, we will understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. So because we are always forgetful, so Arjuna is taking our position. So for us also, we are forgetful, we are in illusion, we don't know what we are doing here, what is this material creation all about, why am I here, why am I suffering, where am I going to go when I give up this body? So we can get all these answers when we take instruction from a bona fide representative, from the bona fide guru, from the bona fide spiritual master, who is a representative of Krishna, who's coming in the parampara system, disciplic succession. Because then for sure we know we are going to get the proper answers. We won't be misguided. Our faith won't be exploited when we hear from the proper authority. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Are there any questions or any comments? If no, then we can go to the next one. Text 21. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam katham sa purusha partha kam ghatayati hantikam. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests on the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. So we can, if we just say that, oh, violence is bad, but then that's just a very general statement. Violence is sometimes necessary. If somebody's committed a murder, then he is going to be sentenced. He will get capital punishment. So in that case, violence is necessary. And then the judge who is ordering such a sentence, he's not going to be implicated for murder of this murderer. He's just carrying out his duty. He's giving out the justice. In Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life, he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. So many of us nowadays, we say, oh no, shouldn't have capital punishment. What is this? You shouldn't have. But in the Manu Samhita, which is the codes given for us, the human beings, it is said because the laws of karma are there. Even though we can escape from the laws of the state, of the government, but the laws of karma, we can never ever cheat them or bypass the laws. No. If we murder somebody in this life, for sure, in the next life, we would be murdered. And that's the reason in earlier days, the murderer would be hanged so that his next life, he doesn't have to be suffering the sins for a longer time. He doesn't need to suffer too much. Otherwise, for many lifetimes, he would have had to suffer. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. So Arjuna, he is a Kshatriya, and it is his duty to kill the aggressors. The Kurus were the aggressors. And so according to the law book, the aggressors should be killed. So it's not that Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to do something illegal or immoral. No, in fact, Krishna is telling him, you do your duty, set an example. Now, we are not Kshatriyas, so we can't say, oh, this one is an aggressor, so I'm going to kill him. But we are not Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a Kshatriya, so he could do that. So everything has to be taken in the proper context. We can't simply imitate. So, and thus, similarly, when Krishna, yeah, we finished that. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge. So there is no possibility of sinful reaction. So Arjuna is not going to be implicated in sins by engaging in this war. And same way as a doctor, he picks up a knife. He does pick up a knife and he does cut the patient, but his intention is not to kill the patient. His intention is to cure the patient. So Arjuna is going to be doing the act of killing, but in fact, the aggressors, the people who had done wrong, they would be benefited. You know, they all get liberation. They all get liberated by just seeing Krishna while leaving their bodies. So it is such a good thing. Otherwise, how could they even think of getting liberation? But just because they're seeing Krishna on the battlefield, they all got liberated. So Krishna can never ever do anything which is wrong. Krishna is all auspicious. In fact, when Krishna is there, nothing inauspicious can be there. He's all auspicious for everyone and everything. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody has any comments or questions, then please do ask at any time. So I'll just continue with the text 22. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani granati naro aparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Now, if we think that this body is the last body I'm ever going to take, I mean, until and unless, of course, we are fit enough to go back to Godhead, that's another story. But thinking that, oh, this life is the last life and nothing's going to happen after this. No, we are going to take another body. Well, it could be either a spiritual body or a material one. Depends on how we have lived, what is the condition of our consciousness. Change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of body, which appear from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in a previous verse, 2.13. So we keep changing our clothes, you know, morning, night, the clothes are dirty, so we change. Same way, our body keeps changing. When we were small, we didn't have this body as we have now. And we changed that small baby body for a youth body. And then some of us are changing that body to, you know, an even older body. So like that, the body keeps changing. And then at one time, we are going to change this body for another new body. So it's just like giving up and taking, like changing our clothes. That's what the soul is doing. But then the question is, we need to ask, why am I doing it? Do I have to? That's the thing. That's the question we need to question ourselves. Why am I changing these bodies? What is the purpose of all this that's happening? So because we don't have to, you know, we can make a permanent solution to that. And that's the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, to get us to thinking that transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. The supersoul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad, as well as the Svetashvatara Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. So the Upanishads, the Mundaka Upanishad and the Shruteshvatara Upanishad, they say, they are comparing that the soul and super soul are like two friendly birds sitting in the heart, and one soul, he's just watching. He's just watching what the other soul is doing. And what is the other soul doing? He's eating the fruits. Some of the fruits are sweet, so he enjoys, and some of the fruits are bitter, so he suffers. And so the bird that is eating the fruit, that is the individual soul, the Jivatma, that's us. And we are always waiting, oh, I'm going to do this action. And by doing this action, I'm going to get this result and I'm going to enjoy in this way. And we are always looking for those results. And that's what's keeping us here in this material world. We are keeping on doing so many actions and so many unlimited desires, and we want the results. We keep saying, I'm going to do this and I want this thing to happen. I'm going to do like this and I want like this thing to happen. Our mind just does that. And we have endless desires. And that's why since time immemorial, we are here in this material world. We are just engrossed in eating the fruits. Even if one of the fruits is bitter, we say, never mind, this is a bitter fruit. I'll eat the next one. The next one will be sweet. So it means that right now I'm not enjoying, I'm suffering, but that's okay. Suffering will go, I'm going to enjoy again. If the situation changes, I will enjoy again. So Krishna is the witnessing bird and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body. But as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. That's all we have to do. We have just forgotten that we have an eternal relationship with Krishna, and we don't even want to be reminded. We want to say, no, Krishna, I want nothing to do with you. I'm independent. I'm individual. I am all powerful. I can do anything I want to do, whenever I want to do. And that's how I want to continue. And because of this, we still continue to live in the material world because we have forgotten, actually, I'm the soul. And the glory of the soul is, a soul is so glorious. We are actually very glorious. We are Satchidananda. We are full of light and energy and happiness and love. But because we are thinking we are the body, and the body is just dead matter, and we are thinking we are the body. So we are, devaluing ourselves so much, actually. And in this, and the only thing we have to do is we have to just start taking instruction that agree, yes, I made a mistake. I think I'm not who I think I am. I don't think I'm the creator, I don't think I am the controller. We just have to start thinking. And in this way, if we just try to surrender to Krishna, then we don't need to take another body. We can go back home, back to Godhead, and be situated in our eternal glory, eternal relationship with Krishna, where there is no anxiety, no lamentation, no distress. Soul is eternal and nothing happens to the soul, but the feeling of happiness or sadness is felt by whom? It's felt by the soul. The soul is the one who desires, and the happiness and distress is felt by the soul because the soul is thinking. We are thinking we are the body. So we think we are suffering. It's like, and our suffering is compared in a dream at night when we are sleeping. We dream of a tiger. Prabhupada gives that example, and that we are being swallowed by the tiger. So in the dream, we are very fearful. Oh, tiger is swallowing me. We are sweating, and that's why we say, oh, I had a nightmare, right? So we are suffering. But when we wake up, we see, oh, there's no tiger. I'm okay. My body is okay. You know, nothing happened to me. But we were actually suffering when we were experiencing the dream. We were suffering. But when we wake up, we say, oh, that was okay. It was a dream. Similarly, in life, all the suffering we are experiencing is actually like a dream, because it's all temporary. It's all because we are identifying ourselves with the body. For the soul, actually, there is no distress and no suffering. But because we are thinking I'm the body, and because the body is subject to suffering, that's the reason we suffer, and we take on that suffering to ourselves. It's like when we go to a movie theater, we are watching a movie, okay? And we are so engrossed with the movie, and we start identifying with the hero or the heroine on the screen. And then we take on the emotions of the hero or the heroine. We have nothing to do with that. It's not us actually, but we start identifying, and then we start feeling the emotions of that. So same way, right? Actually, we are the soul, but because we are identifying with the body through this false ego and through the mind, that's the reason we end up suffering, feeling the distress. I hope that's okay. I hope that makes sense. If you need further clarifications, we could discuss that further.
I had a question.
Yes, please.
So like, it's not very much related to this, but like, you know how we say that our soul goes from one body to another. So like, does it keeps on continuing, or at some point the soul gets liberated and goes to heaven or goes to Krishna or something like that?
So it keeps on continuing to be here in the material world till the time, only till the time we don't surrender to Krishna, engage in devotional service, engage in hearing and chanting. And then, because you see what happens, to be liberated means what? To be free, right? So it means to be free of what? Free of our
Material.
false, I'm sorry?
And free of the material world?
That's right. And so what does this material world signify? It's our false identification. So till the time we are not situated in the truth, that our true position of the soul, till that time we will continue to be in this material world, taking on one material body after another. But if by some good fortune we come in touch with a devotee of Krishna, and then they engage us in hearing and chanting about Krishna, and then the more we hear and chant, the more we get purified, then we are actually situated in our position as the soul. We understand things as they are. Our consciousness is purified, and our heart again is filled with love for Krishna. Then we don't need to take another body. We go back to the spiritual world. That's the reason we are encouraged to hear and chant, just so we can come back to our natural position.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Does it?
Yeah, I understood now. Yeah, thank you.
It's so good to see you after so long. Thank you for joining in.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, like this is basically the dinner time here, so it clashes sometimes, and I was busy with exams, family, work.
Oh.
So yeah,
it's good.
Everything came up.
Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
So, samane vrikshe purusho nimagno anishya shochati muyamanaha justam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vitashokaha. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend, Krishna, and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. So we are all lamenting here, and our true lamentation is because we have forgotten Krishna. That is the cause of our suffering. The minute we start connecting ourselves back to Krishna, because Krishna is the source of all happiness, you know, when we connect with him, when we are in association with Krishna or with his devotees, we feel happy because Krishna is the source of all happiness. So if we want to be free of our suffering, we want to be free of our tension, our depression, our frustration, we just have to get in touch with Krishna. And the easiest way to get in touch with Krishna, chant his holy name. Chant his holy name, hear kirtan, worship the deity, read Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. And we can see that all our suffering goes. Why? Is because we are being in touch with Krishna. He is all pleasure, source of all pleasure. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, don't lament, do your duty. You know, don't lament for your old grandfather. He's going to change his body. He's going to get a newer body. And you are in fact freeing him of his sins, you know. And this is a righteous war. It's a religious war. So everybody is benefited in this war. And the soul never dies. The point is that the soul never dies. It's going to take on another birth. Until and unless we engage in pure devotional service and put an end to the circle of life and death. If we are not able to complete the pure devotion, come to the platform of pure devotional service, at least let us begin the journey. You know, each journey begins with one step. At least let's put that one step forward. So slowly and surely, one day we will reach the destination. That's the point. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So then we can start. Are there any comments or questions? If not, then we could stop here and then we could chant one round.
Yeah.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Hari Hari Bol.